everybody.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome to the OK Then Show. I am Titia Owens, the Madre.
And I'm Chyna Elizabeth, the daughter.
And what's so phenomenal about today is we have family in the building. I have my first cousins here with me today, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Let's start with this young lady. What's your name?
My name is Angela.
Hi, Angela.
Hi.
Hey.
And what are you to me?
This is my cousin. She's one of my first cousins.
You're supposed to say I'm your favorite.
Obviously my favorite cousin. She's like a sister to me, really. Like a young mom. Like, she raised my sister, and I had a big part of my life. So she helped a lot. So
love you. Okay, who's this man right here?
I'm Christopher. I'm Keisha's first cousin. But she was actually my sister before these two young ladies came into my life. I was the only child for the longest, but then Titia and Bubba, of course, became my brother and sister, and will remain my brothers and sisters.
That's right.
But I'm Chris. I'm her first cousin.
Hey, Chris.
What's that?
And then that young lady over there looking all fabulous.
I'm Carla. I'm also a cousin, and these are my siblings.
And y'all might have seen Carla before. She had the two alpha girls that were on here not long ago, so we had to have them come back. So the topic for the day, everyone, is growing up Coda. Growing up Coda. And so Carla is going to explain what those acronyms are for.
Yeah, what that mean?
Coda just means a child of a deaf adult, and our mother is deaf, and then my brother, his dad is also hearing impaired, or hard of hearing.
Yes.
So therefore, we wanted to bring them on today because, again, there are a lot of young people that are growing up with parents who are deaf or hearing impaired. So we wanted to talk to them specifically and let them share with us those experiences that they've had growing up. So we're going to jump right into it. So I'm going to start with Chris, being that you're the oldest. So when did you understand that your mom was deaf?
So I get that question a lot of times, and more specifically, I get the question of how did I communicate with my parents. My answer to that is it was always natural for me. I think I tell a lot of people that I probably knew how to sign before I knew how to talk, because when you think about it, you have my mom was totally deaf, and then my dad was hard of hearing. So if I wanted milk in the middle of the night, if I wanted something to eat, I had to sign it to them. So I had to learn sign language first before I even knew what the words meant or whatever, or even how to say the words or whatever. So just growing up for me, as a child, you just absorb what you see or whatever. So for me, when they would talk to me with hands, I mimicked what they were doing. I remember being a little child, being hungry for milk. I'd do the sign for milk, or I want pancakes in the morning or whatever.
Okay, pancakes. Show me pancakes.
Pancakes. You want pancakes? There you go. You need some milk. You need some milk. So it's just natural. It's just a natural.
Yeah.
And I will say my experiences are probably going to be a little different from theirs, being that I was in the house where both of them were deaf. I didn't have that communicator to speak to me then to communicate to them, whereas theirs will be a little different. But you know that so growing up for me, I learned how to sign, then I learned how to talk or whatever, and it just goes from there or whatever. So I encourage anybody though to say that the more you do it and use it, and the earlier that you can do it and use it, the more than likely you'll retain it better. So
okay. So how far apart in age are you from your siblings?
So me and Carla are 14 years, and Angie and I are 16 years apart.
Wow.
And I will tell you that being an only child for so long, growing up with deaf parents or whatever, there were some experiences early in life that once they came along, of course with the assistance with my mom's brothers and sisters or whatever, they didn't go through them. So I can just if we're just going to talk candidly.
Come on, Dan.
So some of my experiences with the deaf community is a little different or whatever. I remember growing up with my parents going to, say, a deaf club. They used to call them deaf clubs or whatever, but basically it would just be music or whatever. But I used to tell people all the time, my parents were deaf, but I lived in a very loud world or whatever. Deaf people communicate with one another through when they need to get each other's attention. It's not, if I have my back to you, what can I do to get your attention? It was a hit of the wall. It was the vibration of the floor. I can say, so doorbells didn't work for us in the house, or if they did, I could hear it, and the way I would get to my parents would either be a vibration on the floor, or I would boom my voice in a way to where they could feel it or whatever.
Right.
So
That's amazing.
And that's just how it was. So
Wow.
So I was this little. I'll never forget being a little kid growing up. Getting it by the time I got to kindergarten, I was so loud, but it was just natural to me.
Yes, you were loud.
So this little,
Yeah.
still loud. This little country. I remember being in a plane and just screaming my lines out just because that. But I didn't know I was screaming.
Yeah.
And all I know is the whole audience just laughing at me. You know, it was Jack and the Beanstalk. I'm the best Jack out there, just screaming out. But you know, I just had to project my words, and that booming comes out or whatever. So. Again, for me, the experience of, communicating, I can remember being at those deaf clubs, and so deaf people, they can't hear and people say, well, why they listen to the music? They get into it just like us because they're going by the vibrations, they can feel the beats from the walls, on the ground, or whatever. It would we actually had quiet rooms for the hearing people so we could talk to one another.
Oh, wow.
It's totally different, but that's just the natural. It's not, and you got to realize, so me growing up back in the 70s and 80s is going to be a little different from them coming up, later in the 90s and things of that sort. So the technology has changed a lot of the things, but back then it was just projection, loud vibrations, and that was a way of getting attention or whatever. So,
Well, okay, Carla, so you were the second born, and by the time you were born, you were out of the home?
No, I was still there.
You were still home. Okay, so you were born. You found out she was coming, and then how did you have to assist her with communication?
So for me, and I'd always ask for a sibling, right? And then now I'm 14, I'm like, okay, now I'm in high school. But it was, I think, I'll say this, being that because I was born in Wichita Falls, and we transitioned to Dallas when I was 10. So
shout out to Wichita Falls.
Wichita Falls all day. So Carla coming in at the age of 14, for me going into high school was it saved me in a sense or whatever, because I felt that my mom was deaf, but I took on her responsibilities as well. There were a lot of experiences that I had that it didn't want at this time. It was just Carla that I didn't want her to have, so I kind of wanted to shield her. I wanted to teach her. So those things that my mom and dad didn't teach me from a hearing perspective, I tried to do with Carla. So I assisted my mom. Of course, my mom is her mom, and I wanted her to do what moms do, nurturing. But then I was the big brother, and I wanted to stay in my lane and be a brother, not try to be a father figure or anything like that. So I wanted to stay in my lane and just be her big brother. So growing up, it was, we had the assistance from my mother's brothers and sisters, but at the same time, when it was coming to sign language and things of that sort, it was me. My mom, of course, would teach Carla sign, because that would be Carla's natural way of communicating with her. But then I would do that as well. And then so my mom, she's deaf, but then she also speaks. So her speech may not be as a hearing person maybe. So then I know, growing up with Carla, whatever, I would say things to not really correct my mom, but just say it in the way that
you felt she could understand
it or whatever.
Okay, so Carla, now you jump in and you tell us, what was that experience like because like Chris told us, his coming into the knowledge, because it was the initial conversation or the initial learning of communication was through the sign. Right. So you had that same experience. Right. What was that like for you?
Well, I do recall having both. I knew from an early age that my mom signed, and we used our hands when we communicated, and we tapped, and we were very close, when communicating. And then with Chris, and he was a good big brother. I mean, I remember him playing and taking care of me. I can almost imagine our apartment, even as a little girl, and I remember the bedrooms and how he would come and get me. And so I remember talking, but I also remember signing. One thing that is a little different though is he said it was loud, and although me and Angie were loud and maybe me and Chris were loud, our house was quiet. You know, the TV wasn't on real loud. My mom didn't play really loud music. So a memory from being a child is kind of a quiet home.
And I remember this when you were a child. I remember when we would come and get you and we were loud, you would start crying because we were too noisy.
Right.
So we did see that we had to learn how to be quieter when we were coming around you. This was when you were a baby though, because the noise for you just was too much. And we didn't know that coming into your home. So you know, I'm loud by nature.
Yes.
So therefore,
If y'all haven't gotten just
Right.
very much so.
so I literally would come in the house, hey, and you would just immediately start crying because it would be like, who is this? That noise to you was just too much. I'm sorry, Angie, if I keep bumping you. But yeah, so I do remember that being a thought process that I had to make note of, that I need to be quieter when I'm around Carla. Until she understands how you got more comfortable with us, because you hadn't been around us a whole lot either. So that was just new for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the difference too is, you know, my mom, well, when Chris was growing up, he had his mom and dad.
Yeah.
With us, it was just my mom and my brother.
Got
so
it.
having the two to balance out, I remember vividly both experiences.
Wow.
That's
Okay,
amazing.
so now we have Angie. So Angie's baby number 3.
Baby, I just remember having, it's kind of fuzzy, and I think because my mom kind of had these, you know, transitions in her life after having Carla and then me, so I remember like Amy's house and Titia and them, and then, but I definitely have vivid memories of Chris sitting us down and teaching us signs. I don't know, you know, because we were apart for a little bit from my mom, but I do remember my mom, but I remember, I don't know, it's the
thing that
early days
sticks
are
out.
fuzzy. Yeah, but
And I can
eventually I
understand
remember,
that.
no, I just remember Chris definitely sitting us down and like,
Lessons.
you know, us doing lessons, you know, eventually, and just kind of going from there.
So Chris, when you had these two, did you feel responsible for them
I did.
because
I did.
of that?
I
Tell
did.
us about that.
So the thing about me, and one thing I want to encourage others to, and you know, and I don't mind saying this. So my parents got a divorce early on or whatever. So for me, having deaf parents and back then, just say for instance, a parent-teacher conference, right?
Yeah.
So I like telling
Were
the
you
story.
called a lot? Was your mom called a lot for parents?
You know what? This is about Coda.
I was just trying to see if your mom got called a lot because you were very vocal.
Yeah, but see the thing about that though,
is
and these
so
people
funny.
would call me, and so back then, and that's why we're trying to get the message out there to encourage others to understand and learn to do sign. If you have someone in your life that is deaf or hearing impaired, because they would leave it to me to sit in front of this principal
And tell on
and
yourself.
tell on myself and say what I had done, and so that. Whole they don't
never
know.
got a drink.
Yeah, I never. You know. Now, why you get called up? Oh, you know, I got a gold star today. So, you know, my interpretation, and so my mom will be sitting there looking like okay, and then the response was back, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a whooping when I get home. They don't know what I'm saying or whatever. So you know what was funny to me. I mean, as far as them or whatever. So that's why I say when they were growing up, I wanted to not let them go into situations where they had to go through that type of experience or anything like that. So yeah, I would teach them and just when you say that I feel responsible for them, I feel responsible in the fact of I wanted them to be able to assert themselves and talk to my mother and not have to. I had to grow up real early. I had to, and you know that goes into our family as well to where you know. My mom is a sibling of 11 other, there's 12 of them total or whatever. And, you know, even just communicating amongst them or whatever, you know, communicating with the family or whatever, you know, I had to do that between my mom and her siblings. And, you know, they had their own ways of communicating as well or whatever. But when it came to signing, you know, I always wanted my mom to feel included in conversations. I always wanted her, because a lot of the times before me, you know, whatever their method was, it got made better when I came in to be able to hear somebody say something and then
translate it.
And I will tell you that Angie and both Carla have taken that and ran with it. Angie, of course, is ASL certified, went to school for it or whatever. So Angie just took it to the next level. Mine's came as just, you know, doing it naturally. Angie went to school for it. Ken will sit there and somebody be talking and she'll be signing during the whole time. And that's where I always wanted my mom to feel included in those conversations or whatever. And so when them growing up, I wanted them to take that flag and run with it even further, and they did. They really did.
Okay, so that's all good and wonderful. What I want to hear though is, were there ever times where you all were frustrated or somewhat even embarrassed that you had to sign, or you had to show people on the outside that your mom was different? Start with you.
I think I was sometimes frustrated. I think, and possibly more because we weren't always able to do certain things, like because my mom didn't work and she didn't drive, so we had a lot of limitations when it came to like activities and friends and stuff like that. So it was that as a whole, you know, not just the fact that my mom was deaf. A lot of people thought it was cool, and I think there were, you know, people who, you know, like, show me how to sign, and we, you know, we kind of became friends based on it, you know, and stuff like that. I remember that in elementary school for sure. And then over time, you know, it was just kind of, like I said, as a whole, you know, it just wasn't easy growing up with a parent who, you know, struggled with certain things and stuff like that. But I was, you know, I was always told that it was a cool thing, like it was something to be grateful for, you know, like y'all are blessed, y'all have 2 languages, and so I felt that, you know what I mean? I definitely always did. So,
but you used the words wasn't easy. So tell me what caused it to not be easy.
Like I said, I think it was because my mom being deaf and having 2 young daughters that she wasn't able to, I don't want to say support us, but you know, she ended up not being able to work anymore because she ended up getting injured, and she didn't have money for childcare, so she had to take care of us herself, you know, up until we were able to go to school. And then at that point, it was, you know, it's just kind of supporting a family on your own. So she, you know, she was able to get assistance and stuff, so we just kind of lived that way, you know, up until college, I guess. Okay,
so Carla, I'm gonna come back to you. Angie, Carla, you share a little bit about that as well.
Well, I'm the middle child, and so with that, my perspective was a little different than the oldest and the youngest. I kind of felt I was always frustrated. I was always upset. I was always embarrassed. You know, that was really how I felt about it. And I didn't have a problem sharing my frustration, even with my mother. And I, you know, learning, growing in a family that was supportive of us and talked to us, was able to help me put things in perspective as I got older. But it wasn't something that I wanted to talk to my friends about.
Do you know where that came from? Like, was it a feeling that you realized, and I'm saying that because for the person that's watching, you had those emotions, but they started somewhere. So was it that you were in a situation that you can remember where you look back and you said, I remember this happening and it caused me to have this feeling? Or was it just the fact that you had to communicate in this way that just felt uncomfortable?
I think overall, it wasn't a particular moment or a situation. I think everything was just hard. You know, the communicating. You know, my mom only got ASL learning when she was a teenager, right? She didn't go to school to learn how to sign. So the communication was always a little tricky because she wasn't well versed. She was the only person in our family that was deaf. we weren't really involved with the deaf community as much. So she was the only person in our life that was hearing impaired, deaf, or what have you. Don't get me wrong, I do remember going to the deaf club. I do remember going to the Deaf Action Center and interacting with other adults, but it really just wasn't our day to day when we start going to school.
Right.
All my other friends, their parents would pick them up, and there were birthday parties, and he said parent teacher conferences. My mom never went to a parent teacher conference. I don't think out of my entire school career, mainly because she couldn't. She didn't have a means to get there, so my brother would, or my aunts, Aunt Helen or Auntie Esther would come in her place. But I think all of that just really bothered me.
It brought frustration.
100%.
Okay, so now with that, Chris, you hearing that, did you have any of those experiences?
So, and I was just about to go into that. So my experiences were totally different. I think I at the beginning, mine was actually just flipped because for me, my mom did work. My dad worked. And our community was the deaf community. It was an oddity to go around hearing people. But I will tell you that frustration, and I'll get to where my frustration comes in or whatever. So for me, when especially back early 70s going into the 80s or whatever, when you're a child, when I'm at this age doing sign, people aren't they don't normally see this or whatever, right? So I was proud. I actually took a different approach for it. When I took it was a pleasure, or I took it as a privilege to be able to go somewhere with my parents and someone of speaking, and my parents are deaf, and I'm interpreting for them. It's like I was wearing if you think about it, our whole family looked at me as, well, that's the smart one there, because look at him, he's
we thought that about you. We thought you had some sense.
It was the same. That's how it played out.
We thought you did.
That's just how it came to me. Yeah, okay, whatever. Look at us now. But seriously though, so for me growing up, with them being deaf, it was I don't want to use the word
honor, so to speak.
People said it was a disability, right? And true enough, it is a disability, losing one of your senses or whatever. But at the same time, it was the position that God had put me in or whatever. I think I am a person that I am now because my parents are deaf or whatever. I think the frustration came for me later in life as my parents transitioned and they got a divorce and we moved to Dallas. My frustration came into, why are there not more people knowing how to communicate with deaf people? From getting a light turned on, from getting water, from getting signing a lease. I'm doing this all with my mom or whatever. So I started getting frustrated with, why are there not more people out here learning how to communicate? The deaf, there's just, I don't know the population. There's a lot. So I think my frustration came when we came to Dallas, and it was just like, there are so many people that cannot. How are these people? Other than a pencil and pad, how are they communicating? And that's when I started getting mad. And then, even with our family, I didn't even notice the difference in the ways that they're not communicating with my mom until it was like we were around them more. Because again, back in Wichita Falls, we were around that deaf community.
So you saw the people communicating
all the time, and it was a natural thing. So my frustration came later on.
Realizing,
and the thing is, people want to look at deaf people as being different, but they were always natural for me. That Coda, being a child of a deaf adult, you just take that as being, that's the way things are supposed to be. So my frustration comes more from, now we're in 2023. Things have changed, and there's it's a lot of the education out there around
more resources.
learning and resources and things to learn and communicate. But I can tell you, back in those early '80s and transitioning to that's where my frustration came. You know, so my frustration is not their frustration. We're talking about the same person here,
Of course.
you know, it's just different experiences or whatever.
And that's the thing about time too. The thing about time and age and experiences, because like you said, you were 14 years older than Carla, and then 16 with Angie, and then your life with your parents in Wichita Falls, that was a totally different community, and then they're coming to Dallas. Her experience even with people, the interaction, just all the different things. And that's the thing. It's like everybody's dynamic, even in any home, regardless of whatever the parents' communication is, the dynamics are different with each child. That's another thing I want you all to understand. It's like it doesn't matter that they were raised in the same home or they have the same parent. They all had totally different experiences and how they received it, how they felt about it, and what the experience was altogether. And that's what we want to communicate, that it is a different experience for every person and every child. And so going back to you, Angie, your brother was saying how you had learned as ASL and you started teaching that. Tell us a little bit about that journey. How did you even decide that you were going to do that?
I was in college and I hadn't really decided a major. And my ASL teacher, I did decide to take ASL as my foreign language, and they were starting a new major, and he encouraged me to take that leap, and I did. And I really think that it benefited me more than I would have ever thought, even though I'm not interpreting technically right now. Like Chris said, my mom is one of 12. I was raised pretty much mostly by my mom and all my aunts and my brother and my cousins, St. Phillips. Like, they raised us more. It was a huge community of people that had their hands on me and my sister. And being able to learn more about my mother and her experience in a way that was actually like written on paper about the history of ASL and education and educating people.
What is ASL?
American Sign Language.
Okay. For the person that's watching this, like, what is ASL?
So there's different languages for ASL?
Yes.
Well, for sign language.
There are different sign languages across the world. Yes.
Right.
Wow.
Different countries have their own version.
I used to always wonder that when I was little, though.
People, just like Chyna just asked, people still don't realize that language is
sign language is just as diverse as
any other language.
Like we speak English,
sign language is a language.
Spanish,
It's
French,
not just it's not based on English. It's not based on English at all.
No,
it's actually completely different than English. I mean, you can translate between the two, obviously, but that's why you have to interpret between the two, because it's completely different.
Right.
In every country, they get their own, or it came about on their own, just like any other spoken language. It's an actual language.
So the hand signals are not the same at all.
And being able to learn these things didn't come until I went to college. So like I said, I learned so much more than I thought I would, or that I realized I would, about my mom and just about the culture in general and how it relates to us, as her children, how it impacted us as her children.
Angela actually taught me a lot because for me, again, I had to grow up with a natural aspect of sign language.
I mean, and that's its own perspective, I know. But again, a lot of the history and stuff, like the ADA wasn't a thing. The Americans with Disabilities, that wasn't a thing until like the 70s. Mama went to school in the 50s and 60s. So she didn't even have the opportunity to really learn the way other kids was learning around her.
Was she born deaf, or
she became deaf when she was a baby, when she was like 10 months? Yeah,
okay.
so
she got sick with meningitis.
So it's like knowing that, it's like, mom's life looked a little different than most people's. You know what I mean? And not really realizing that until I'm an adult in college taking this class. It was very eye opening.
So what did that do? What was the eye opener? What did it cause you to understand?
Just how difficult her life was, and what that must have felt like, or you know how I could, because even now it's not that easy to just fully get that much information in terms of how my mom's might be feeling or her mental state, and just trying to get what it might be like just based on history and based on what I know was available to her and what she received from her parents, from her siblings. All of those things contribute to a person. And knowing that and understanding my mom in a better way, I think has helped me understand myself, or just, you know, like what that might look like for a person with a baby in the 90s with, you know, this and that, or, you know, and then struggling and, you know, not having full support, like not having a whole community of deaf people around her or whatever, you know, like.
And that's what I was going to go into, because you know, now the big push for a lot of different reasons is D&I, diversity and inclusion. You know, a lot of the way that my mom is now is because she was not included, and I feel that if she had been included, she may not even be in the state, or, you know, have the feelings that she does towards certain things, because that transition from Wichita Falls to Dallas, where now she's not, she had to go find that community of deaf people, you know, that transition, or that in between time, you know, it did have an impact on her. So, you know, my word to everybody is, you know, and it's not just about a deaf person, it's anybody with a disability. Try to include them. We intentionally include different type of D&I methods for different cultures and things, or whatever. Do the same for disability. You know, one thing, and we have a thing at my job where we intentionally have to go out and do a what's called a D&I event. My wife just recently did one where, for the month of July, it was Disability Month, and she proposed to them that they do a D&I event for my mom's deaf community, to where they went out to the deaf. And it
shout out to Felicia.
Shout out to Noah. Shout out. And it was such an eye opener to the people, the participants, because they were like, well, this is about D&I. Why are we going to talk to some deaf people? And it's just like, you don't understand. It's opened up so many doors now. It opens up doors to the job opportunities that we have at GM. I work for GM. So it's like, how can we include deaf people in doing some of the tasks and jobs that we do? They're not any different. Right. They just can't hear. Right. But that doesn't mean that they can't do this same job.
Well-educated deaf people. Like, they go to college, they do so much more than, you know, a lot of people you might see. And, you know, it relates to a lot of different things, like resources, you know. Yeah.
One of the things, I was going to say, one of the things I take pride in, I know my sisters have as well, is when I've been on a job place, I used to part-time at a Best Buy, and to see a deaf person come in, I would light up. I would light up. And I would love it, because they would go, and initially they are, they're pulling out their pencil and pad. And I'm like, hold on, put that back there. Let's talk. What do you need?
Just happened
what do you
to me
want?
Recently.
And when I can, they just go on they light up, and it's the, you know, and I'm so sorry, that's my phone.
That's okay. That's all right.
And just to see that. So again, include deaf people as if they are natural people. Talk to them, and you know, I know for a lot of people, they see it and they want to do more, and they'll want to go out and learn ASL just because I want to do more. I had so many people at Best Buy, man, that was so cool what you did. Okay, teach me some words, so when you're not here, we can learn how to talk, and just include them. That's so the way wonderful. It should be. It's just be natural with it.
That is so wonderful.
Can I add to you know, don't mimic. Because I know a lot of people who will ask to learn something, but in a way to make fun. Right? There's a difference between appreciating the language and the community, and then mimicking or making fun of. And you know, me being me, I don't mind calling you out on it. You know, with the right intention. You know, and because it is a beautiful thing, I have learned over the years that it is a blessing to be able to have that ability, and it's something that, you know, I want to pass it on to the next person to teach others. We both, Angie and I, have had those same experiences where we walk into a grocery store or anywhere and see a deaf person who needs help and no one is available to help, and so we'll go out of our way to just see how we can support. And it makes up for that little Carla who was frustrated. I'm making up for it now.
That's awesome.
That's beautiful.
So Carla, to keep in your emotion, give us a moment that you had with your mom that was either precious or memorable where you had to be there for her.
What do you mean?
Just whatever moment there was. I mean, it was your life, but there were moments that maybe you took personal and felt, I'm so glad I was here for my mom.
I think when I started to have my girls, my kids.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's okay. I love emotion. I love it.
Yeah. We do got a liar.
Yeah. I understood her more as a mother.
Yeah.
And had to apologize
Yeah.
for not being an easy child.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I was like the most rebellious child or whatever. I still did good in school. I didn't like getting in trouble per se. I wanted to do good by my mom. Like I wanted to make good grades for her. So I always did well in school. We were active where we could be at church, whatever. So it wasn't like I was just bad. But I definitely know I didn't make it easy for her.
The word I'm hearing is you needed to be more compassionate. That's what you needed to be, more compassionate. And so you're saying that over time you became more compassionate. And so when you had your girls, that gave you the understanding of what with your mom?
It's hard to be a mother, right? It's just, this world is crazy. Yeah. And having people that you're responsible for and you don't really know what to do with them. Yeah. You just kind of look at them like, what we gonna do? Just try to figure it out. And to know that she did it with, the support of her family.
But on her own.
It
was on her own. Yeah.
Right? And how much of a challenge that was for her. I think I started to come to the realization when I went to college and things like that. But it really hit me when I had my kids.
That is so good. When was that moment for you?
I guess learning in college, I think, just walking into this major, just for I don't think I really intended to become an interpreter. You did. Changed it.
You did.
I think I would have been more embarrassed of dropping out. So I just chose it and I went into it, and here I am. And I'm every day I'm grateful about.
Do you think it was going to be easy?
Yeah. And it was the most the complete opposite of easy.
Yeah, because I remember encouraging Angie.
All of us were when we found out about it.
Oh yeah, just go do it.
Yeah, that's gonna be easy.
That's why I didn't know there was so much more to that.
And like Carla said, my mom didn't sign language back then wasn't as much of a thing. She doesn't really do ASL like the way that they're teaching ASL for an interpreter to be doing. Like you learn in every aspect of all the parts of the language, and my mom does.
She's not a formal trained ASL.
Exactly.
And she speaks so well, even without that. That's what I was always so
it's
impressed
just the way
with.
She was taught,
Yeah, however she was taught, I always felt like I could understand her.
And they were teaching, and they were trying to teach them how to speak.
Exactly.
That's how long ago my mom was in school. That generation. Right. They had the hearing aids and they would force them to speak.
They would force them to take speech classes.
It was even though they couldn't hear. It was speaking and learning how to cook and stuff.
And that part goes with the reading of the lips too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mom reads lips very well.
That was part of the teaching, learning how to read lips and speak and hear it and be able to talk and communicate with hearing people, not anything about sign language.
Right.
So me going in this ASL I guess 08, 09, I was learning all these different things about the history and how it even started, and it was crazy. You know, it was just like that.
Eye-opening.
Very, very illuminating. Yes, very. Yeah.
So at this point, for people that are watching the show, what advice do you all want to leave with those who are growing up with parents who are hearing impaired or maybe hearing impaired themselves? What would you say to those people?
So honestly, my message isn't going to be directly for the kids that have parents or the deaf. It's for the family. Your aunt, your uncle, your grandparent or whatever. They may be deaf. I would say if you have a family member, period, that's deaf, you know, get involved, because you never know when
Just get
you'll
to
be
know them.
right. You never know when you're forced into a situation to where you may need to speak for them, communicate with them,
Defend
or
them.
defend them or whatever. So it's not even just, you know, for me it's easier to talk to the Coda kids because they know it. They're a product of their parent or whatever. But it's for that extension of family that my message goes more to, is to learn it, to get involved. There are a lot of things that, you know, our family ask about Aunt Eddie or whatever.
Right.
Go ask her yourself.
Yeah.
You know, go ask her yourself.
Because the thing about my mama, she gonna teach you.
Yeah,
Right.
she
If you
is.
try
She'll teach you better than us. Yeah.
She doesn't mind giving you a lesson
Right.
on how to say
Communicate
something.
with her.
Right.
Right.
That's very good.
So
I
my
love
message
that.
is and don't feel like you can't approach a deaf person because you don't know. And you may start off with that piece of paper and then trying to, but
They're
then
gonna
that,
appreciate it so much.
and they will. That will turn into, well, tell me how to sign it to you, and then and she don't have no problem with communicating
Correcting you.
and correcting and showing you how to do it. So
love
my
that.
message is, don't be afraid to try to communicate with someone that's deaf or whatever. You know,
that's so good.
Yeah, it's more than just the Coda child. It's the family. We need to think of another acronym for whole family involvement. Right.
Totally.
So you're saying, and I'm just reiterating, you're saying for those people who are surrounding the person who is deaf, get involved, get to learning the communication, how to communicate with them. Don't be just dependent on pen and paper. Figure out how to use your hands. Get connected to other deaf organizations that can teach you ASL. Or are there other resources that you can learn sign language?
I mean, everything's on the internet.
All right, YouTube.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
YouTube
apps,
University?
there's apps now that you can actually just download on your phone that
Okay.
are just ASL or American Sign Language. So yeah, there's a lot out
There
there.
are plenty of resources out there.
I want to ask you, like, how did that make y'all closer? Like, y'all have a whole, not a secret language, but
Oh, girl.
not a lot of people
It's so
around
real.
y'all.
Oh, it is very real. It is so,
real.
because at any given
That's a
moment, you go in the sign language, y'all don't understand what we're saying.
Exactly. When we're in public,
Oh, yeah.
it gets really
Oh,
bad.
yeah, right.
Try not to do it,
I do not.
but
I try.
Please.
they be just.
I love that. Because y'all don't just be talking about anybody.
You know, anything.
Anybody.
Oh, and oh yeah.
Oh yeah, let's talk about
Okay,
it.
now,
Hold on. Let me say this.
That's not true.
Let me leave this in.
That's
So Chris,
his kids. Probably.
Chris and Felicia, his wife, they always have game night, or they have different events where they invite people over to eat and fellowship and play games. So it is my understanding that they may be doing some cheating.
No.
Because they're speaking to each
I know what
other
you're
in
talking
sign language that nobody else knows what they're saying. So speak
Not
to that.
true. It's not true.
No, I will. Whenever we play charades or something like that, I'm just gonna sign it.
It's hard to play charades without signing.
Yes, I don't know how to not sign.
It's not my fault. I don't know how to sign.
But wait a minute. In Uno,
Oh no.
you don't have to play no charades for Uno. So you mean to tell me you don't be cheating when it comes to
No, I mean, if I got a yellow tube, you know, a blue fire, you know, change the color. Yeah, that is color. Change the color. So if all the stuff you throw down there, and I'm like, color change.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Trying
Yeah.
to
That is an advantage, I would tell you that. But we've never done that. never.
Yeah, she have it.
Absolutely love it.
So silly.
I think that is so great.
Yeah, secret language.
So that's what it is within you all as a
But
family.
if people learn it more,
For sure.
it's no longer a secret.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Well, I must say, I feel educated today. I feel equipped to, because Aunt Eddie, that's my aunt as well. And I remember when she was living with us, she would teach me sign. I actually took a sign language class.
We did it together.
Yeah, just for her. But again, when you don't do it all the time, it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
It is real easy. I remember being so proud to show her whatever I learned or however I would remember those things. And I could still remember very little, but that's what I loved about Aunt Eddie, was because she made sure that she taught you. If you didn't understand, she was going to take the time to actually teach you how to communicate. So I just encourage those that are watching as well, just like you've heard this family here talking, get to know the communication, get to know how to use sign language. And he just said they told you there were resources out there for you to, there's no excuse, in other words, there's no excuse. And so now that we've talked about this as a family, I want to start with you, Angie, telling us, what are you okay with? After hearing all of this that we've talked about, what exactly are you okay with? With the
I'm
subject.
okay with not working in the field of my major because it has impacted and benefited me much more than it's hard to explain. But if I was interpreting, I think that I would feel burnt out. You know, I grew up with a deaf mother. I'm not a random person that just fell in love with sign language. So it impacted me in a different way. So I'm okay with this. I'm okay with not being an interpreter right now. But I love my mom. I love my language. I love the community that I'm a part of, and I'm okay with all of that.
Well, we okay with that okayness, man. Okay, Chris, what are you okay with?
I'm okay with getting over some of those frustrations that I had early on. And the reason that I've become more okay with it is because of the resources that are now out there that are teaching more people how to get acclimated and knowing how. So I've come to release some of those frustrations now. So I'm okay with the time changing and the D&I and inclusion of the disabled or deaf people or whatever, and people learning and trying to make that effort, because I do see it happening more. So I'm okay with releasing those past frustrations.
Well,
yeah, there you go.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Okay, Carla, what are you okay with?
I like, feel the same way as Chris, just being able to let it go. It was quite a journey to get here. And, if I could share with other kids who are in a similar situation where your parent is the only deaf person, really find your support system as far as like school or family or group of friends or what have you, and just talk about it and get it out, get it off your chest. Don't hold it in, because it's gonna be frustrating for any child that has to interpret or to support a parent with a disability, any type of disability, even if you're in a wheelchair or a blind parent. I think all of us kids who have a parent with a disability have those true moments of frustration and where you're questioning, why me? Why did I have to have this in my life? But just know that at the end of the day, this is what it was supposed to be. This is what is meant to be, and to make the most out of the situation, because it all is a beautiful thing at the end of the day.
Yes.
That's awesome. Chyna, what are you okay with?
I'm okay and very happy and blessed to have the family that I have had the privilege to be a part of. I love y'all so much.
I love you.
Yeah, but I just love our whole family dynamic. We have a beautiful family. Everybody's different in their own way, and I love how we all just come together.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm so excited about that answer. I'm okay with just having this family, like being in their lives at different parts of it. I was with Chris when he was very, very young. I did see his transition of being that somewhat out of control little boy. I do understand he was called to the office quite a bit because he was very busy. He was a very busy young man. However, what we saw with Chris was he was very smart. We thought he was very smart because he could communicate so well for his parents. And then not only that, when his siblings came into play, just even how he nurtured them as well. And I'm so grateful. What I'm okay with was just having the time in their lives, just being able to watch this whole transition and seeing their growth and who they've become, even with having a deaf parent. They are outstanding young individuals. And I appreciate that so much, just being able to watch their journey. So I'm okay with that. And I'm so proud of each and every one of y'all. I want y'all to know that so much. I'm so excited that this is my family and stuff and stuff.
Hey.
And so then, we're gonna shut it down. We have been watching Growing Up Coda. Okay,
Yes.
so if you have family members that or friends that you know that have dealt with this, make sure you share that in the comments as we close out. And we want them to follow us and stay connected.
Yes, make sure y'all follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and make sure y'all subscribing
On YouTube.
Come watch us so y'all can see how cute we looking, because we look good. And then if you want to hear us, you can go on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and hear us and hear on a good conversation we just had. It was a great conversation. But make sure y'all come back every Wednesday at 9 a.m.
On YouTube.
And on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're about to shut it down, so we're gonna end with saying all of us together. Okay. Bye.
All right.